I'll just see if I have something to share with you. अध्यक्षा बेटा अपना माइक म्यूट करिए. Well, I am at home, but why do you ask? Anything special? Yes, Akshat? स्कूल के क्लासेस scheduled हैं 10 to 12:30 and sorry, yes, 10 to 12:30 and 12 to 1:30, and I'll need to go to school on 2 days per week, and I went school for class 9th today. It was okay. And then I came back and I took class 7th, and now I'm taking your class because it's easier to manage things at home. पूरा स्कूल नहीं खुला है, पूरा स्कूल खुलेगा भी नहीं. We are opening it in phased manner.
मैम 8th तक के बच्चों के नहीं खुलेंगे, 6 to 8th?
अभी तक तो बेटा ऐसी कोई जानकारी नहीं है हमारे पास. इट्स बिन रीओपन फॉर क्लास 9 to 12th ओनली. अब तुम्हें इतनी याद आ रही है तो तुम अपना कैमरा ऑन कर लो, तुम मुझे देख लो, मैं तुम्हें देख लूंगी. सो एटलीस्ट वी कैन feel like we're in school. That is all we can do. Okay, so we were doing 1857, and let's see if we have something nice here. The problem with the online videos, the other online videos I find, is that they are prominently in Hindi, and I don't feel so good about sharing Hindi videos with you on this platform. But if you want to, you can always check out other videos just for fun, just for passing your time. And I think we have already seen these videos, but it will not harm us to look at them again. The causes of the revolt of 1857. इनके तीनों के आप क्वेश्चन भी बना सकते हो.
The initial years of the British rule in India were marked by conquests and rapid expansion. Many a times, people protested against the British expansion policies, the strongest being in 1857. Indian historians have also referred to it as Great Revolt of 1857 or the First War of Indian Independence. Let us walk down the pages of history and find out the various political and economic reasons for the First War of Indian Independence. The British East India Company arrived in India with the aim of gaining and expanding its political power in the country. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the East India Company adopted several unfair policies to expand its territorial power. One such policy was the doctrine of lapse, an annexation policy introduced by Lord Dalhousie, the then Governor-General of India. Under this doctrine, the East India Company could directly annex any princely state if the king died without a male heir of his own. States like Jhansi, Satara, Awadh and Nagpur were annexed as per this policy. The Indians resented this unfair policy. On the other hand, in 1849, Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar received a humiliating order from Lord Dalhousie to vacate his ancestral palace, the Red Fort. Bahadur Shah's successors were also denied imperial titles and dignities. The proposal of taking away the title angered the Muslims. Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao II, also was a victim to the British policies. He was denied his due pension after his father's death. Another factor that added to the unrest among people and the Indian soldiers in the British Army was the annexation of Awadh. On the pretext of misgovernance, the British exiled its king, Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, to Calcutta. After the annexation, everybody, including the Indian soldiers who owned lands in Awadh, was forced to pay higher taxes. The company also confiscated the estates of talukdars and zamindars. Awadh demonstrated resentment from all the sections of the society and hence played a major role in the uprising of 1857. Under the East India Company rule, India was being ruled by the British government from England. The revenue collected from India was being drained to England and not utilized for the welfare of the Indians. The Indians resented this unfair rule. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution, the British started buying raw materials from the Indians at very cheap prices and exported them to England in bulk. The products were processed in England and the finished products were sold in the Indian markets at a much higher price. These unfair British policies led to the collapse of the Indian handicraft industry. Within India too, the system was not fair. The revenue from India was used for paying salaries, incomes and other expenditures of the British in India. The British drained away India's wealth, for which India got no proportionate economic return. The British also introduced the land revenue system that fueled unrest among the peasants. The increase in land revenue often forced the peasants to sell their lands. This economic decline also affected the cultivation and led to many famines. The British policies also affected the royal patronage and slowly led to the disappearance of the court culture. Many Indian court officials lost their jobs. People like the poets and artists were denied their royal patronages and went through an economic crisis. On the other hand, the farmers, especially in Bengal, were being forced to grow indigo in the fields as indigo trade was highly profitable for the British. The peasants had to work under inhuman conditions and were punished severely if they planted anything else. This helped to increase the revenue of the British government, but it made the Indian farmers miserable. All these events led to the Revolt of 1857.
I hope that covers a lot of points when it comes to the revolt of 1857, and that will be an extra question that you need to do. What were the political and economic reasons for the revolt of 1857? बुक में भी आप लोग देखेंगे, आप लोगों को कहीं पर कोई कंफ्यूजन होता है आप मुझसे पूछेंगे. इस वीडियो में आपको कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो अभी पहले पूछ लें. Anyone, anything? Now let's discuss the immediate causes that we were discussing yesterday also.
The revolt of 1857 was the result of social, economic, political, military and religious discontent. Let us go through some of the important reasons that triggered the revolt. Some of the Indians did not appreciate British interferences in their social customs like sati and caste system, which was based on the 4 Varanas. Furthermore, British campaign for women's education and the introduction of the Widow Remarriage Act angered the orthodox Hindu society. The Indians also had apprehensions about the modern innovations such as railways and telegraphs. There were rumors that telegraph posts were built to hang Indians who were against the British rule. While the introduction of railways was believed to be one of the attempts by the British to defy the Indian caste system, the higher caste Indians refused to share the same compartment with lower caste people. The British also ill-treated Indians and called them barbarians and niggers. These cruel acts of discrimination fueled a rage of anger amongst the Indians. Moreover, British land revenue policies created an unfair social system in which the rich zamindars took advantage of the poor farmers. When the cultivators were unable to pay arrears of land revenue and interest on debt, they were tortured and sometimes imprisoned. The British government criticized some of the local beliefs and customs and opposed idol worship. They in turn promoted the Christian missionaries. However, some of the Indians feared that the missionaries would convert them to Christianity. The traditional way of education was also being replaced with Western education. This was looked upon by some Indians as a way of encouraging their children to accept Christianity. Besides, the religious sentiments of the Indians were also hurt when the British imposed taxes on the lands belonging to temples and mosques. The Indian soldiers were deprived of rewards and privileges unlike their British counterparts. Indian soldiers were also deprived of promotions. Subedar was the highest position given to an Indian sepoy. All other higher positions in the army were reserved for the British soldiers. Also, the salary structure was unfair, wherein the British soldiers enjoyed 8 times the salary of the Indian soldiers. To add to the misery, the Indian soldiers were often asked to serve in areas away from their homes without any extra payment or additional allowance. The most important cause that triggered the revolt of 1857 was the use of greased cartridges in Enfield rifles. Rumors spread that greased cartridges were made of cow fat and pig lard, which hurt the religious sentiments of Hindu as well as Muslim soldiers. At one point, Mangal Pandey, a soldier at Barrackpore, refused to use the cartridges and attacked a British officer. This action cost him his life. He was sentenced to death on April 8, 1857. Mangal Pandey's death triggered the already growing discontent among the Indians and led to the revolt.
Yes, any questions, any queries regarding this portion? The immediate causes, that will make another extra question, that what were the immediate causes of the revolt of 1857. These two are very important things. अगर इसमें कुछ भी ऐसा है आपको लग रहा है कि आपको समझ में नहीं आया या किसी चीज का बैकग्राउंड आप नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं, ask it now so that I can solve it and move ahead. Fine, since I cannot see any questions from you, I will move ahead. And again, याद रखना ये extra questions बहुत important है.
The decision taken by Mangal Pandey on the 29th of March 1857 at Barrackpore set the Sepoy Mutiny in motion. He rebelled against the use of cartridges which were rumored to be covered in the fat of pigs and cows. This action of his cost him his life. News of Mangal Pandey's sacrifice spread like wildfire throughout India. The protest spread to Meerut, where 85 soldiers refused to use the new rifles. The British sentenced them to 10 years in jail. Outraged, the very next day, other Indian sepoys in Meerut took to arms. They stormed the jail and released the imprisoned sepoys. They shot the English, set their bungalows on fire, and also destroyed the telegraph lines between Meerut and Delhi. The same night, the sepoys marched from Meerut to Delhi. They killed the British soldiers and persuaded Bahadur Shah Zafar to lead the revolt. His acceptance renewed the hopes of many Indians. But the Sepoy Mutiny in Delhi was short-lived. The British fought back and banished Bahadur Shah Zafar to Rangoon. Delhi was recaptured in September 1858. Several uprisings took place all over the country. Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Bajirao II, led the revolt in Kanpur. The victory here was short-lived. Nana Sahib fled, but his commander Tantya Tope fought on. The Kanpur uprising was followed by the uprising at Lucknow led by British Qadar and his mother Begum Hazrat Mahal. The British forces were defeated, but this too was only for a few months. Lucknow was recaptured by the British in March 1858. This forced Queen Begum Hazrat Mahal to flee. The revolt in Jhansi, central India, was led by the fearless Rani Lakshmibai. Jhansi was captured. Rani Lakshmibai died battling the British troops in June of 1858. The British were shocked at the extent of the rebellion, but soon used repressive measures to crush the rebels. Peace was restored 2 years after the outbreak of the Sepoy Mutiny. The end of the revolt marked the end of the East India Company and the beginning of the reign of the British Crown in India.
Anything? Any questions? वैसे हम ये भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, बट स्टिल इन केस यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चन, एनी क्वेरीज. देखो मैं तो वीडियो दिखा दूंगी क्योंकि मैं पढ़ा चुकी हूँ, मेरी तरफ से चैप्टर खत्म हो जाएगा, लेकिन अगर आपको कंफ्यूजन है तो आपको दिक्कत आ सकती है. दिस इज द वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट चैप्टर ऑफ दिस क्लास.
The Revolt of 1857 shook the very foundation of the British Empire in India. Let us learn about the results and its effect on the socio-political life of India. The most significant effect of the Revolt of 1857 was that it brought an end to the rule of the East India Company. As per the Government of India Act of 1858, the administration of India was transferred from the East India Company to the British government. This meant that the power of governance of India lay in the hands of the Secretary of State for India, who was a member of the British Cabinet and was responsible to the British Parliament. The Secretary of State was aided by a council that consisted of 15 members. The actual governance of India was handed over to the Governor-General of India, who assumed the title of Viceroy or the Crown's representative. Lord Canning was the first Viceroy under the Government of India Act of 1858. This transfer of governance was made public at Allahabad during the Queen's Proclamation on 1st November 1858. The proclamation promised non-intervention in social and religious matters of Indians, respect to the rights of princes and Indian customs, equal treatment to Indians and Europeans, grant of pardon to Indians who participated in the war, no annexation of the native Indian states, working towards advancing the Indian industries, and promoting works of public utility in India. During the revolt, the British defeated and deported the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar to Rangoon, which is now known as Yangon, thus bringing an end to the Mughal dynasty. On the other hand, Nana Sahib, the last Peshwa, also fled to Nepal after the uprising failed. Thus, with the end of the Mughal and the Peshwa rule, the British got rid of two of their most formidable opponents, the Mughals and the Marathas. Queen Victoria's proclamation also assured respect to the rights and dignity of the Indian princes, as they had helped the British in suppressing the revolt. The proclamation assured the withdrawal of the policy of annexation and the doctrine of lapse, along with giving an assurance to the Indian princes to allow them to continue to rule their states. The Indian princes willingly agreed to rule under the British Crown. The British, however, cleverly continued their policy of divide and rule by turning people and provinces against each other. Most significantly, the British disturbed the unity between the Muslims and Hindus. They showered undue favors on Hindus to win their loyalty since they formed the majority. The increasing divide between the Muslims and Hindus ensured there was no threat to the British rule in India. The already existing racial bitterness between the British and the Indians increased after the revolt. The British considered all Indians as inferior in comparison to their racial superiority. They maintained a social distance to establish their authority over the Indians. Many hotels, clubs, parks, and even railway compartments were reserved only for Europeans. On the religious front, the British assured that they would not interfere in the religious affairs and traditions of the native Indians. Another major effect the revolt had was the reorganization of the British Indian Army. In order to prevent further uprisings, a number of military changes were undertaken. The strength of European troops in India was increased, while that of the Indians was reduced. The Europeans were given charge of key military positions. Afraid of another uprising, the Indian troops were never given sophisticated arms and ammunitions. The Indian artillery units were also disbanded. The divide and rule policy of the British reached the military grounds as well. With an aim to discourage nationalism, the recruitment to the army was highly influenced by racial discrimination based on caste, religion, and region. Additionally, the Indian soldiers were cut off from the happenings in the rest of the country by prohibiting access to newspapers and other publications that promoted nationalism in the country. On a national level, the revolt of 1857 paved the way for several uprisings that promoted rebellion among the Indians against the British rule. The sacrifices made by leaders such as Mangal Pandey, Lakshmibai, and Nana Sahib inspired the future freedom fighters. Thus, the revolt of 1857 is also termed as the first war of Indian independence. Let's quickly recap the main effects of the revolt of 1857.
Yes, so anything in the whole chapter इसके साथ, क्योंकि ये chapter खत्म हो जाएगा. If you do not have any question, then we will conclude this class, and in the next class we'll move ahead with the question and answers. This is also a very important questions, that what were the effects of the revolt of 1857. You should be able to explain at the very least 5 of them. कम से कम 5 तो आपको आने ही चाहिए. Sai Ram, okay. Yes, Adhyasha. You want to ask
Ma'am, in
something?
page number 61, it's
Ah.
written that it was also decided that instead of recruiting soldiers from Awadh, Bihar, Central India, and South India, more soldiers would be recruited from among the Gurkhas, Sikhs, and Pathans. Ma'am, why?
अच्छा देखो ऐसा है, बिकॉज द सोल्जर्स फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर रीजन, पहले तो चीज वो रिक्रूटमेंट मीन्स दैट दे विल बी एनरोल्ड इन द आर्मी, उन्हें आर्मी में जगह देंगे। तो क्योंकि ये सोल्जर्स ऑलरेडी पहले ही रिवोल्ट कर चुके थे, सो दे डिसाइडेड कि अब यहाँ से कोई सोल्जर्स को रिक्रूटमेंट नहीं देंगे, दूसरी जगह से रिक्रूटमेंट देंगे। तो वो दूसरी जगह कौन सी होगी? गुरखास, जिनका कोई एफिलिएशन नहीं था इस रिवोल्ट से, सिख और पठान। जिन लोगों ने रिवोल्ट में पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करा, उनको वो लोग जो है अब आर्मी में रिक्रूट करना शुरू कर रहे थे, क्योंकि अगर वापस उसी जगह से कर लेते तो दे कुड हैव टेकन more actions against them. Well, marks, if you want to, I can tell you your own marks, but I will tell you in the class only. If you're comfortable, I can declare your marks. I don't mind. Pinky?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone, whoever wants their marks, just write Y in the chat box. I will tell your marks. Pinky, you got 6 marks in the descriptive paper, and your object and your Google form was not submitted. Anybody else? There are a lot of you. I'll need to keep going. Fine. Netik, you are 20. Parth, 16. Adyasha, 25. Rehan, 13. Mudit, 7. Rudraksh, 19. Akshita, 24. Devang, 17. Rohit, 21. Nikunj, 12. Tanisha, 22. Monica, 19. Nandini, 13. Purti, 9. Radhika, 20. Shreyansh, 19. Akshat, 13. Purti, I already told you your marks. Udit, 20. रेहान, तुमने अपना ईमेल आईडी गलत डाला होगा, यू हैव स्कोर्ड 5 मार्क्स इन गूगल फॉर्म। खुशी, 19. प्रांजल, 25. पूर्ति बेटा मैं बता चुकी हूँ 9 मार्क्स हैं तुम्हारे।
Ma'am, in Google form.
गूगल फॉर्म बेटा कौन पूछ रहा है? पिंकी
No,
पूर्ति, तुम्हारा दोनों का गूगल फॉर्म सबमिट नहीं हुआ।
मैम किया तो था।
बेटा आपने वहां से किया, कुछ नेटवर्क प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है, कोई भी प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है, मेरे पास आपका गूगल फॉर्म नहीं आया है। आप एक बार चेक करें, जीमेल पे रिसीट नहीं आई होगी, क्योंकि रिसीट उसी को मिली है जिसका फॉर्म अल्टीमेटली सबमिट हो गया है। मैंने मैनुअली चेक नहीं करे हैं, गूगल फॉर्म ऑटोमेटिकली ही चेक होता है।
Yes, ma'am.
ओके, एनीवन, एनीथिंग एल्स? फाइन, सो दोज हु हैव स्कोर्ड वेल, ठीक है। जिन लोगों ने नहीं करा उन लोगों के लिए मुझे ये कहना है कि यू नीड टू फोकस अ लिटिल बिट ऑन व्हाट द क्वेश्चन इज। कई लोगों ने ऐसा करा है, क्वेश्चन कुछ और ही था, आंसर कुछ और ही लिख दिया। भाई जब आपसे क्वेश्चन ये पूछा जा रहा है कि हाउ यू कैन रिड्यूस सॉइल इरोजन, तुम लोग पता नहीं क्या क्या लिख रहे हो। साफ साफ उसके अंदर 4 वेज दिए हुए हैं हाउ यू कैन रिड्यूस सॉइल इरोजन। थोड़ा सा क्वेश्चन को पढ़ो, उसके बाद उसका आंसर लिखो। So that will be all for today's class. Thank you. And 25 descriptive was of 25. So that will be all for today's class. Thank you and Sairam. क्वेश्चन आंसर तैयार रखना, अगली क्लास में पूछूंगी मैं।